Welcome in to another edition of the crossover. Brandon Kravitz, Mike Bianchi. This is where In the Zone meets Open Mic. We are the Han Solo and Chewbacca of sports talk radio.
Aye.
I knew I wasn't even going to have to ask.
Aye.
I knew the Chewy.
It's a terrible Chewy. I know. So.
All right. I've got a couple of questions for you that I'm very curious to get your feedback on. But okay. I just, if I know you this time of year, one of the two things you're going to tee up to me is how I'm bracket guy and I don't pay attention to college basketball all year, and then I pretend like I know what I'm talking about. Go ahead. No, give it to me.
Okay, I'll tee it up. You're semi-bracket guy, all right? You're a semi-bracket guy, but you're definitely fantasy football guy. And we were debating this on our show earlier this week. Who is more annoying? Okay. Is it bracket guy who wants to tell you about his bracket, or is it fantasy football guy who wants to tell you about his fantasy football team? Personally, do you want I'll let you answer first and then I'll respond.
I think it's easily fantasy football guy, and I heard Kelly give the best reason why. You got to deal with this guy all year long. Believe me, I know. I'm one of them. I understand you're beating people over the head with this for 17 weeks, and it starts before that because then you have a draft to worry about too, and you've got multiple leagues. I think most people understand the etiquette of if you want to fill out multiple brackets that are different, fine. You can't go walking around telling people that you have the 12 seed winning here, but you've got a 13 over here, and you've got all these different combinations and iterations of a bracket. I think most people understand that. There is no common decency when it comes to fantasy football guy. They will just come over the top rope with all 17 of their leagues. I'm in a 2-quarterback league over here. Hey, I need a flex. And they'll hit you up at any time in the day. Here's the difference between fantasy guy and bracket guy. Bracket guy rarely asks for your advice. They just kind of tell you what's going on, and you could choose to listen or not. Fantasy football guy wants feedback on their rosters, and it becomes like a part-time job talking to fantasy guy.
You want to know why? It's why I think bracket guy is more annoying, because fantasy football guy wants advice because he actually cares about what he's doing. He actually knows a little something about what he's talking about. Most people who are in fantasy football, they follow football. They know what's going on in the league. They know the names. They know the players. Bracket guy, this guy knows diddly poo about college basketball, hasn't watched the college basketball game all season, and then all of a sudden he wants to tell you why the 12's going to beat the 5. Give me a break. I don't want some ignoramus telling me about something he knows nothing about. Fantasy football guy at least knows what he's talking about.
Don't you think most people that don't know college basketball but get excited to fill out a bracket understand that they don't know what they're talking about? Do you get the sense?
Then why do they need to tell us about it? Oh, my bracket's wrecked. Well, of course it's wrecked. You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
You know, the ironic part, Mike, is it's usually those people who do the best with these brackets. My wife watches negative college basketball every single year. She beats me every year with this bracket. Of course. It's like clockwork. Yeah. Research gets in the way. So Florida's red hot right now, and I've got them winning the championship. I haven't heard you lay out your bracket yet. I'm positive.
I do have a bracket, but I will not burden you with my bracket.
Just the champion. I just want to hear the champion.
I've got here's what you know me, Kravitz. You work with me long enough. I root for the story. All right. I root for the best story, and to me, the best story for me and for you and for everybody who works in sports in the city of Orlando is the Gators, because they're the only team that we have in the tournament. So obviously I've got the Gators winning because I'm hoping they do, because it gives us something to talk about locally during the tournament. It gives us something to feel good about. Walter Clayton Jr. obviously is one of the, best players in college basketball, first AP All-American in Gator history. So I'm picking the Gators. Certainly I'm not alone. Every ESPN analyst, it seems, is picking the Gators. So I hope they're right, but they're probably been jinked by all of us picking the Gators to win. Who do you have, Kraft?
I have the Gators as well. My question was going to be about just how well the basketball program, and they're loaded with talent, and they're clearly paying for it. I think in any sport now, especially football and basketball, if you succeed, it doesn't take you long to start looking at the dollars and seeing how there's a correlation there between spending the proper amount of money for a successful roster and then the winning that comes with it. The Gators football team got hot at the end of the year, and there's a lot of excitement going into next season with DJ Lagway, and people are off. Billy Napier's back right now. Between that and the success that the basketball team has had this season, it feels like Florida is hot as a whole. Should we be giving them way more credit for an NIL collective effort than maybe we have been?
Maybe. I actually think the SEC deserves more credit for what's going on with Gator basketball than the Gators themselves do. Let's face it. Scott Strickland, who's been embattled as an athletic director at Florida, he sort of lucked out with Todd Golden. He was happy to keep Mike White, Todd Golden's predecessor, as the coach. He wasn't going to fire Mike White. Mike White just got tired of Gator Nation complaining about him, and he ended up taking a job at Georgia. And Scott Strickland said, "Oh, okay, so I don't have to fire him now. I can." And he rolls the dice on this young coach at the University of San Francisco, and boom, Todd Golden has worked out for the Gators. But the SEC gets credit, in my opinion, because back in, I think it was 2016, Greg Sankey, the commissioner, I think they got 2 or 3 teams in the tournament. They all got eliminated early in the tournament. And Greg Sankey essentially called the ADs together and said, "Listen, you guys better get your basketball programs in gear here. You better start investing money, resources, facilities, all of that in basketball." And boom, that to me was the catalyst of why the SEC has become the most powerful conference, top to bottom, as Jay Billis said, in college basketball history.
Yeah, I'm probably not hot enough on all of these SEC teams going into the tournament because the run that the conference had this year was second to none. What else you got?
One last question. You being Mr. Orlando Magic, a member of the Orlando Magic radio broadcast team, I'm worried about the Magic. And here's why I'm worried about the Magic. I think the narrative after last season, rightfully so, was the Magic were one of the up-and-coming, best young up-and-coming teams in the NBA. And now, and again, I realize about the injuries, so we'll take that into account. But you saw what the Rockets did to the Magic the other night. You see what the Pistons are doing. You're seeing what Oklahoma City is doing. And all 3 of those teams are as young, if not younger, than the Orlando Magic. I'm worried that the Magic, maybe they aren't even one of the top 4 up and coming teams in the league. Are you concerned at all, Mr. Magic?
I think that's valid, and there's a team that you're leaving out because they've completely fallen off the cliff due to injuries, and that's the San Antonio Spurs. I think Magic fans should probably envy where they're at. Victor Wembanyama is going to be the best player in the league before you know it, and they have De'Aaron Fox, and they drafted Stephon Castle, who's going to win the Rookie of the Year. So they're going to be another one of those teams that when you go into next season, people are more optimistic on the Spurs. They'll be more optimistic on the Pistons. They're obviously going to be more optimistic on OKC and the Houston Rockets. And all of a sudden, this list that you used to stand atop of as far as great young teams, you're now sinking to the bottom. There absolutely is a reason to be concerned. But what I keep going back to, Mike, is that I think I'll use a Mark Daniels-ism, the journey. Okay.
The journey.
This is a 2-year journey. If the Magic had done what they're doing right now last year and what they did last year this year, we would feel completely different about things.
Right.
The Magic were the 5 seed in the East. They skipped a step. They were supposed to be a play-in team first, and instead they jumped into the playoffs, and they were a seed away from having home court advantage. So everyone just assumes that when you're here, and my hands are in the middle, right, when you're here this year, next year, you're supposed to be a couple of steps above, and the Magic have slipped backwards. So they have work to do. Obviously, this roster needs some major reconstruction. We are very quickly turning into the I4 eyesore with the roster not named Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs. So there is definitely work ahead.
Let me say it. The crossover is over.